Hello, and thank you for taking time out of your very busy schedules to join me today. I hope that there's something in this video that is a benefit to you or to somebody that you know. Please like, subscribe, and share this video. You can find us on Getter, and then you can find us on Rumble and Locals. And Locals here, I plan to have some things finalized here very shortly so we can get that taken care of. And you can go ahead and join as a member if you'd like. Within the past week, I'd come across some information that kind of like was hard to swallow. This from the administration that's already called me domestic extremist. Why? Because I'm a Christian. When you choose to be a Christian, you voluntarily choose for a harder life. You do. You choose to be better. You choose to continually improve yourself, even on a daily basis, even if it's only 1%. Why? To develop talents that you can sell to others, that not just be a benefit to you, but to those around you as well. Service is really good for helping with that sometimes. But you voluntarily choose for a harder life. Even Jesus said that to follow in his path, we would be persecuted for it. You kind of expect it to some degree. And of course, I've had plenty of people, I'm 53, I've had plenty of people look at me and say, I don't know what real racism is. Okay, so I've never had someone tell me flat out they're not going to hire me because of my skin color, because I can get a job anywhere. Had another gentleman who owned a business, telling me, since I was an independent contractor to him, that he refused to pay my hours and that I needed to learn as a small business owner to sacrifice to build my small business, and that he'd only pay half of the amount of wages. That kind of came back to bite him in the ass later. But what would I know? That gentleman didn't have any racism against my skin color, thinking I wasn't working hard enough for him. I don't know what that's like. At some point, everybody has experienced some form of racism. Try it now. If we were more of a merit-based society, that would be experienced just the same, maybe even less, if we taught people not to look at a person's skin color, but to look at what they have achieved or what they've managed to do with the time that they've had here on Earth. Thankfully, my time's been a little expanded after surviving a massive coronary. 5 years now? Doing pretty good. I walk a couple miles a day. Getting back to what I was talking about, getting back onto topic before I get too far off and have to trim too much off and therefore have no personality and seem like a wet noodle. I think a wet noodle's more fun than me. This is from a fact sheet by Vice President Harris, in which she announces a new public and private sector effort to advance racial equity at the Freeman's Bank Forum. This particular fact sheet here can be found at the White House, and this was dated October 4th, 2022. So it's a pretty recent statement in which she made this. I have a few objections. Because minority happens to be what? Whoever the government decides is the minority. Unfortunately, for too long, the small business ecosystem in underserved communities has struggled to keep up with better funding businesses and entrepreneurs with more communities. Entrepreneurs of color regularly report being turned away by traditional financial institutes for loans at a higher rate than their white counterparts. And the community lenders committed to filling the gap similarly reported that shortfalls in capital and technical capacities limit their ability to invest in the communities that need them the most. So they don't have enough capital because not enough people use the banks? Under President Biden and Vice President Harris's leadership, fascist regime, this administration has taken significant steps to address these disparities. What disparities? Okay, we applied for the PPP loan. The one lender that had anything to say, because most people, we either got a recording or no one answered the phone, which means they got the money, got to keep 10% of that money, and if they didn't find anybody who qualified, had to give it back but could keep their 10%. No. Lenders haven't had any kind of a bailout recently, at least not that we know about. So a lot of people made their money. The vice president announced that the first of its kind private sector initiative, the Economic Opportunity Coalition, committed to investing billions of dollars in underserved communities and small businesses emerging from the pandemic. Okay, back to the PPP loan. The one person we were able to talk to said we needed $75,000 in revenue as well as 10 employees. So obviously the PPP loan was not meant to help startup companies. It was meant to help existing companies. And you know where most of that money went anyways? It went to law firms to pay lawyers. So when they talk about all this PPP that went out, it went to pay mainly lawyers for not working. It's what you get when you elect a bunch of lawyers into Congress. So small businesses emerging from the pandemic, not startups, but businesses that have already existed. Again, in my state, my business is so small, I don't qualify for any of the government help. As a matter of fact, I make too much money even to qualify at times when my business is breathing in, is the best way of putting it. The new directive unambiguously establishes a spoil system for racial minorities in all aspects of economy, from housing to employment to taxation. I'm going to include a link down below, but that is important and key. They're going to try and tax based on your race, not your economic status, on your race, because right now the rich are able to take advantage of all the tax breaks. An example being, I believe it was in, 2021, that if you made over $400,000, you got a $50,000 tax rebate. Or no, if you made over $400,000 a year, you got a $50,000 tax credit. Again, so who's benefiting from that? The middle class or the rich elite? 1% of America makes that $400,000 a year or more. So now they want to look at tax codes to quote unquote appropriately tax people. Not to mention, just last month, the Inflation Reduction Act allows for the hiring of 87,000 new IRS agents. This again, as I pointed out, came out October 4th. Yeah, you don't think they're trying to do something? Please. So go ahead, take a look at it yourself. Flat out, they're going to be doing changes to the tax code. The next thing I found handy was the Treasury strategic plan for 2022 to 2026. And their strategic plan overview, one includes promote equitable economic growth and recovery. So again, we're going to see more racism in this. Enhance national security. Okay, nothing wrong with that. That seems standard. Protect financial stability and resilience. Combat climate change. What the hell does the Department of Treasury have to do with climate change and modernizing Treasury operations? That's where the CRT comes in, of how they're going to hire more minorities specifically. But what the hell does the Treasury Department have to do with climate change? Oh, this is bad. Now, part of their strategy includes increasing audit coverage and strengthening fraud prevention efforts. Goal 4. Global climate commitment and leadership. The desired outcomes is what concerned me the most. Again, what does the Treasury Department's concern? Oh yeah, Biden said that CRT needs to be in all aspects. What does he call it? Diversity, inclusion, and equity? Die. Anyways, desired outcome. Global reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. What the hell does the Treasury Department have to do with the reduction of greenhouse gases? We're talking about the people who deal with the money. Increased alignment of financial flows consistent with the goals of the Paris Agreement. What? Taxing companies that are having too much quote unquote greenhouse gases? Well, first it used to be CO2, and now it's methane. And this third one I saw, and I'm like, you got to be kidding me. What are these people on? What are they smoking? Increased public and private sector resilience to the impacts of climate change. What does that mean? Someone's going to come and Shovel the snow off of the sidewalk in front of my business? I mean, it's not snowing today. Sure, it's going to snow sometime this year. Probably before December 20, December, probably before December 31st. It'll probably snow here, although it tends to snow more just in February. The way things are here, but it'll be cold. So they're deciding how the climate impacts my business? Why is the people who are supposed to be concerned about my money and inflation worried about, at some point, I'm sure they're going to blame the recession on climate change, if they haven't already and I've just missed it. I mean, this particular whole thing on their global thing reminds me of the oxymoron of Army intelligence. It really does. Just reading this, all I could think was, this is what Army intelligence gets you, period. There's so much bureaucratic BS in this. From the White House, advancing equity and racial justice through the federal government. Since we can't find proof of racism, we're going to pull FBI agents off of pedophile cases and have them search for more cases of white supremacy, as reported by one of the news agencies. I want to say Breitbart, but I don't think that was it. Probably Tim Pool. I heard it from Tim Pool, so I have to find the receipts. If you really want them, let me know in the comments down below. This bothered me. Now remember, I'm going to get back to where they're talking about new directives unambiguously establishes a spoils system for racial minorities in all aspects of the economy, from housing to employment to taxation. With the executive order 13985 on his first day, advancing equity is not a one-year project, it is a generational. Yeah, because Martin Luther King was helpful in going, we are colorblind. Whole generation that's colorblind going, what are you people talking about? Oh, there's plenty of pissed off people. You're always going to find pissed off people. Somebody's always going to be pissed off at what you do. I got people who are pissed off that I breathe still. Just the fact that one of them happens to be an ex-wife doesn't count. It is a generational commitment that will require sustained leadership and partnership with all communities, including communities of color, tribal communities, rural communities, LGBTQI+, where's the P? Communities, people with disabilities, women and girls, and the communities impacted by persistent poverty. See, you can't be white and male and understand what persistent poverty is. It's a fact. White House says so. They are part of a broader equity agenda, which also includes implementing the first ever national strategy for gender equity and equality. What happens that you get rewarded for the amount? The Christian belief, you get rewarded for the work that you put in. Working to ensure the federal government is a model for diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility in the workforce. The problem with this is, again, first you need to look at a person's skin color. Then you need to be told what their preferences in the bedroom are. And I don't care what you do in the bedroom. I don't want to know about it. But then again, I'm the kind of guy that sits there and sees heterosexual kissing going, okay, are we done yet? Got enough of this? We done? I don't want to see that stuff. The reason I say that is I was watching somebody in a lesbian and had been saying, I don't want to see a heterosexual couple kissing. I'm like, I don't either. Move on. Oh yeah, I'm not a big fan of rom-coms, or I get myself into too much more trouble. Anyways, so here they're promoting that you find out what a person does in the bedroom, which is a bit perverted to me if you ask me. I don't care. And two, you have to recognize their skin color to understand their struggles. Sounds a bit communist to me, because no two people have the same struggles, So again, who becomes most disadvantaged by this? White, poor males. The part that really got me in this, though, when I was looking at it is, in releasing these plans across the interagencies, as well as snapshots of the largest agency plans here, the administration commits to deepening the conversation with communities, advocates, and all stakeholders, there's a communist word, on how we can partner with communities to deliver equitable outcomes. Not equal outcomes, equitable. Who decides what's equitable? A racist old white man? And an angry Asian chick who calls herself black when it suits her. And then I scrolled down a little bit more, and you can look this up. It's plain and simple, whitehouse.gov/equity. There's no hiding this. This is what our fascist regime is talking about. Engaging with stakeholders and communities, which are basically the same thing as I'll show you here, who have been historically excluded from policy-making processes. So the communities that are actually currently not able and have historically been excluded from policy-making processes would be illegal immigrants, and they don't need to vote. They don't even need to be here. Get them out. We're having enough trouble on our own. And then, of course, narrowing wealth gaps through federal contracting and procurement. This means if you're a black-owned business, you have a better chance of getting a free government contract than not. Not racist. No, not at all. Martin Luther King, gotta be spinning in his grave just as much as George Washington. Engaging in stakeholder communities. Stakeholder engagement is critical to identify innovative solutions with the communities who are most directly impacted by inequitable policies. What does Merriam-Webster have to say about what stakeholder means? A person entrusted with the stakes of betters. 2, one that has stakes in an enterprise. That's kind of the World Economic Forum definition, and I'll show you. Merriam-Webster number 3, one who is involved in or affected by a course of action. Okay, that's kind of broad. Examples of stakeholder in sentences. This comes from Charlie Kahn of Fortune, 14th of September, 2022. Lending institutions like the Business Roundtable and the World Economic Forum have worked to rebrand shareholder capitalism to stakeholder capitalism, adding responsibilities to workers, the environment, and society. So now a company isn't just working for the benefit of its shareholders, those who invested in the company. Now they're supposed to look after the stakeholders, which is the environment, society, or another page which says the government. Meanwhile, China is also trying to preserve its reputation as a responsible stakeholder and protect its economy, trading, and political ties to Europe. Joseph Torrigan, The Conversation, 10th of March, 2022. Examples of how stakeholders are used. That means not people who are invested in the business, but who the business thinks they need to serve. Again, this sounds like some World Economic Forum BS to me. Again, and as an American, the World Economic Forum should just kind of send shivers down your spine. Is the type of thing our founding fathers fought against happening. And for some reason, America, with our loss of morals, has decided Joe Biden anyways, has decided we're supposed to be the moral betters. Again, I'm expecting he's going to screw Saudi Arabia up like he did Afghanistan. We're going to get a lot of people dying over this. Going to Investopedia. What is a stakeholder? Stakeholder is a party that has an interest in a company and can either affect or be affected by the business. The primary stakeholders in a typical corporation are its investors, employees, customers, and suppliers. If you go to key takeaways, a stakeholder has a vested interest in a company that can affect or be affected by a business's operations and performance. Typical stakeholders are investors, employees, customers, suppliers, communities, governments, or trade associations. Why is a government suddenly able to be a stakeholder, have say in a business's operation? I don't like that idea. I didn't stay in the Navy because I didn't like the idea of the government telling me how to think. It didn't work for me. It may work for others, didn't work for me. Stakeholder capitalism is a system in which corporations are oriented to serve the interests of, and it says in bold, all their stakeholders. And again, both the community, either And they call it either internal stakeholders or external stakeholders in an organization. Internal stakeholders are people, they have a direct relationship, such as employees, ownership, or investment. External stakeholders of a company are affected somehow by the actions or outcomes of a business. Suppliers, creditors, public groups are also considered external stakeholders. So if a coal plant is producing coal and follows all the EPA standards, if their production is too high, they can still be held responsible by the quote unquote stakeholders. Which again, if in my state our constitutional amendment number 2 passes, that means the government, because the government immediately becomes the trustee for all of us people, who the government has already told I'm a non-essential worker. How long before they tell me I'm a non-essential person? Before I get too worked up and angry. Oh yeah, that was the video with Pelosi. There we go. The New York Post also, if you get the opportunity, new video from January 6th shows Pelosi vowed to punch Trump in the face if he marches to the Capitol. This also telling her how she wants people to trespass. She wants it. So take a look at it if you get the opportunity. So as you can see just from that one sentence, and this from the U.S. Treasury, advancing equity analysis in tax policies. I'm going to take a deep breath here because, again, I've been a tax accountant for 30 years? Yeah, about 30 years I've been a tax accountant. And this kind of gets to me. This is like, if you want a race war, this is going to do it. So, for ease and convenience, so we're going to go ahead and go to the heartlandnews.com website to an article written by Joe Herring. I'll go ahead and I'll post the link down below so you can go ahead and take a look at it. Because, of course, as you can read, Biden administration has announced a radical preference scheme to govern the application and enforcement of federal tax codes and other aspects of the economy, all in the pursuit of equity. I've already shown you the way they plan to do it through using equity with the Treasury Department. Now, I'm going to go through, like I said, feel free to go ahead, read this article for yourself. I'm going to admit I'm pulling out a few choice quotes from this article. He also uses here the Treasury 2002 to 2006 strategic plan, which is where I was able to get it to show you the receipt on that. Joe Herring with the the Heartlander did a beautiful job in explaining this, because again, I read through it. I'm going to take up even more time just reading through not just this, but the Treasury codes. Feel free to look it up. So, an analysis of how the tax code affects different races and ethnic groups is central to understanding the consequences, both intended and unintended, in our tax laws, reads the policy document. This improved understanding can be used to both shape tax policies designed at the inception of legislation efforts and to better implement current laws. The IRS is legally prohibited from accessing demographic information specific to individual taxpayers, which presents a significant obstacle to birthing the Treasury Department's plan. However, the legal prohibitions will be sidestepped, as the document helpfully points out. And you can feel free to go ahead, as I said, pull it up and read it for yourself in this government document. Recognizing these limitations, privacy protections in law, the Office of Tax Policy is researching statistically valid alternatives for deriving demographic data while respecting privacy concerns and civil rights. You're going to tax people based on race. These include developing reliable methods to input race and ethnicity for tax data, partnering with other data producers to obtain data on race and ethnicity to validate the statistical imputation when legally feasible. And 3, when microdata can't be obtained, partnering with other data producers to obtain tabulature data that includes race and ethnicity for both analysis and to validate imputations. This is where they're going to tax you on race. Oh, and ethnicity, which means that even though they want the tax from the immigrants, they don't have to pay taxes because they're immigrants. The tax codes are going to be, if you want a race riot, there you go. That is the quickest way to have race riots. Though it is illegal to access Census Bureau data or to require its disclosure as part of an individual's tax return, there appears to be no prohibition against guessing at it, then assessing the prohibited data as a means of validating these guesses. My last name's Irish. Again, as I mentioned, people want to act like blacks were the only slaves in America. And then they want to act like there was no such thing as indentured servants. And then you want to have people ignore that there were signs in the 1950s and 60s that said, I believe it's no black, no dogs, no Irish. Oh yeah, privacy protections for American taxpayers are intended to forestall illegitimate uses of their personal information. Many argue eliminating or sidestepping these protections to facilitate the construction of a parallel tax and monetary system advantageous to racial minorities would end up with a robust legal challenge. Boy, I hope that's true. I mean, there's been plenty of times where the lawyer Joe Biden said, well, this might be illegal, but I'm going to do it anyways. The rent moratorium, the tax refund to student loans, yes, that was stopped. But again, as he signed it to go through, he did make that statement. It's not the first time in which the fascist regime of our current government has decided to do this action. And I will say not every politician is the same. If that were the case, they wouldn't hate Trump so damn much. So I would say look to those people who haven't had a political job or career before. And let's start over before things get too much worse, because we're already looking at taxing people based on their race, as if the rich white people didn't pay enough taxes as it were. And I know plenty of black millionaires who, I'm sure would be happy to pay their fair share. I can think of one who actually supports this. Two, just off the top of my head. In my local area, 2 millionaire business owners who support this idea. One of them gets government contracts, admitted because of his skin color, but that's what he tells me. What do I know? So with that, I want to put this out to people. Register to vote. As Ronald Reagan said, our freedom is only guaranteed to the next election. So thank you very much for taking the time out of your very busy schedules to join me. I hope that there was something within this video that's a benefit to you or to somebody that you know. Please like, subscribe, and share this video, and feel free to leave a comment down below. You can also find us on Getter, Rumble, and Locals. United we stand, divided we fall. God bless you, and God bless America.